Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Methodologies of environmental discourse analysis. Environmental discourse analysis methodologies provide insights into how language shapes perceptions of environmental issues. Techniques like content analysis, critical discourse analysis, narrative analysis, framing analysis, and ethnographic analysis offer diverse approaches to understanding the narratives, power dynamics, and framing of environmental discourse. 1. Content analysis. Content analysis is a qualitative research method used to systematically examine texts, allowing researchers to identify patterns, themes, and meanings in the data. In the context of environmental discourse analysis, content analysis involves examining environmental texts to understand how they represent, construct, and communicate environmental issues. 1. Steps in content analysis of environmental texts. Defining the research question. Clearly identify what you aim to understand about the environmental discourse. Examples might include the portrayal of climate change in media or public attitudes towards conservation. Selecting texts. Decide on the sources of texts for analysis. These might include news articles, policy documents, social media posts, or speeches related to environmental issues. Coding scheme development. Develop a coding scheme that categorizes different aspects of the text. For instance, you may have codes for different types of environmental problems, e.g., pollution, deforestation, or stakeholder perspectives, e.g., government, NGOs. Text coding and categorization. Systematically apply the coding scheme to the selected texts. This involves assigning codes to text segments that align with specific categories in your coding scheme. Analyzing patterns. Look for patterns or trends within the coded data. For instance, you might identify how often a specific issue is mentioned, how stakeholders are portrayed, or the tone used to discuss specific topics. Interpretation and reporting. Interpret the findings to draw meaningful insights about the environmental discourse. This involves linking patterns in the text to broader social, political, or cultural themes. 2. Benefits of content analysis in environmental discourse. Systematic approach. Provides a structured way to analyze large volumes of text. Reveals trends. Identifies patterns and trends in how environmental issues are discussed over time. Versatile. Can be applied to various types of texts and adapted to different research questions. 3. Challenges. Subjectivity. Coding can be influenced by researchers' biases. Time-consuming. Requires careful preparation and meticulous analysis. Complexity in coding. Environmental issues can be complex, making it challenging to develop comprehensive coding schemes. Content analysis is crucial for understanding the portrayal and framing of environmental issues, providing insights into societal attitudes and informing policy and public communication strategies. 2. Critical discourse analysis. Critical discourse analysis, CDA, is a methodology that examines the ways in which language is used to exercise power, maintain control, and shape public perceptions. In the context of environmental discourse analysis, CDA is used to uncover power dynamics and ideological underpinnings in environmental communication. This method scrutinizes how environmental issues are framed, who controls the narrative, and how different stakeholders use language to influence public opinion and policy. 1. Steps in critical discourse analysis of environmental texts. Identifying the focus. Define the specific aspect of environmental discourse that will be analyzed, such as the language used in climate change discussions or how corporations communicate their environmental initiatives. Collecting data. Gather a variety of texts, including speeches, policy documents, media articles, and social media posts that reflect the discourse on the chosen topic. Analyzing context. Understand the social, political, and economic context surrounding the discourse. This helps to interpret the text within its broader setting and understand the power structures influencing it. Developing analytical categories. Create categories based on concepts such as power, ideology, and control. For example, identifying language that legitimizes certain environmental policies or marginalizes specific groups. Analyzing texts. Apply the analytical categories to the texts, looking for patterns in how language is used to construct reality. This includes examining metaphors, framing, and narrative strategies used to describe environmental issues. Interpretation. Interpret the findings to understand how language contributes to maintaining or challenging power dynamics. For instance, it could reveal how certain narratives justify environmentally damaging practices or how they marginalize certain perspectives. Reporting findings. Present the insights in a way that emphasizes the relationship between discourse and power, showing how language shapes perceptions and influences policy. 2. Benefits of critical discourse analysis in environmental studies. Reveals hidden power structures. Highlights the ways in which language perpetuates power imbalances and controls narratives. Challenges dominant narratives. Identifies and critiques the dominant stories that shape public understanding of environmental issues. Empowers marginalized voices. Sheds light on the exclusion of certain perspectives and offers insights into how to amplify these voices. 3. Challenges. Subjectivity and bias. CDA can be influenced by the researcher's interpretation of power dynamics. Complexity. Analyzing texts critically requires a deep understanding of both linguistic and sociopolitical contexts. Scope limitations. The focus on power may overlook other significant aspects of environmental discourse. CDA provides a powerful framework for analyzing the intersection of language and power in environmental issues, offering insights into how discourse shapes environmental policies and public perception. 3. Narrative analysis. Narrative analysis is a qualitative research method that focuses on understanding the structure, themes, and functions of stories. In environmental discourse analysis, narrative analysis examines how environmental issues are framed and presented through storytelling, and how these narratives influence public understanding and behavior. 1. Steps in narrative analysis of environmental texts. Identifying the research focus. Define what aspect of environmental narratives you want to analyze, such as the stories told about climate change, biodiversity loss, or renewable energy. Collecting data. Gather texts that contain narratives about the chosen environmental topic. This might include news articles, documentaries, speeches, social media posts, or fictional works. Structural analysis. Identify the structure of the narratives, looking at components such as the setting, characters, plot, conflict, and resolution. This helps to understand how the story is constructed. Thematic analysis. Identify recurring themes or motifs within the narratives. For instance, a story about climate change might include themes like uncertainty, urgency, or conflict between economic and environmental goals. Functional analysis. Analyze the purpose and impact of the narratives. Consider what the narrative aims to achieve, such as raising awareness, motivating action, or shaping public opinion. Contextual analysis. Understand the broader context in which the narratives are produced and consumed. This includes the socio-political climate, the intended audience, and the goals of the narrative creators. Interpretation. Interpret how the narratives shape perceptions of environmental issues and influence behavior. For example, how do certain narratives inspire environmental activism, while others may promote complacency? Reporting findings. Present the analysis to highlight how narratives function in environmental discourse. This might involve showing how specific stories can perpetuate stereotypes, drive policy changes, or mobilize social movements. 2. Benefits of narrative analysis in environmental studies. Reveals storytelling patterns. Highlights common ways in which environmental issues are framed and presented. Influence on behavior. Helps understand how narratives can inspire action or complacency in environmental matters. Insight into public perception. Provides a window into how people understand and relate to environmental issues through the stories they consume. 3. Challenges. Subjectivity. Interpretation of narratives can vary based on personal biases. Complexity. Environmental narratives are often multi-layered and require careful analysis to unravel their meanings. Selection of texts. Choosing representative narratives can be challenging given the diversity of sources. Narrative analysis provides a valuable framework for understanding how environmental issues are communicated and perceived. By examining the stories told about the environment, researchers can gain insights into the cultural and social factors that shape environmental discourse. 4. Framing analysis. Framing analysis is a methodology that investigates how issues are presented, or framed, in various forms of communication. In environmental discourse analysis, framing analysis focuses on identifying the specific angles or perspectives through which environmental issues are portrayed, and how these frames influence public perception and policy. 1. Steps in framing analysis of environmental texts. Defining the focus. Determine the specific environmental topic to be analyzed and what aspects of framing you want to investigate. For instance, analyzing how climate change is framed in political debates. Collecting data. Gather texts related to the chosen topic. These might include news articles, speeches, policy documents, or social media content. Identifying frames. Develop a framework for identifying frames within the texts. Common environmental frames might include economic growth, scientific uncertainty, public health, or moral responsibility. Analyzing the frames. Analyze the texts to identify the frames being used. This involves looking at the language, metaphors, examples, and narratives that shape the interpretation of the environmental issue. Quantifying frames, if applicable, for larger datasets. You may want to quantify how often certain frames are used to identify dominant narratives statistically. Contextual analysis. Understand the broader context in which the frames are used, such as the political, economic, or social climate, and the intended audience of the text. Interpretation and impact. Interpret how the identified frames shape public understanding and influence behavior or policy. For instance, a frame that emphasizes economic costs may deter environmental regulation, while a public health frame may garner broader support. Reporting findings. Present the analysis to show how specific frames shape the discourse around environmental issues. Highlight which frames are dominant and what implications they have for policy and public perception. 2. Benefits of framing analysis in environmental studies. Reveals influences on perception. Helps understand how the presentation of issues affects public opinion. Policy implications. Shows how framing can influence policy decisions by highlighting specific aspects of environmental issues. Diverse applications. Can be used across various forms of media and communication, providing insights into different aspects of environmental discourse. 3. Challenges. Subjectivity. Identifying frames can be subjective, with different researchers potentially interpreting the same text differently. Complexity of frames. Environmental issues are often multifaceted, and frames can be intricate and overlapping. Data volume. Analyzing a large number of texts can be time-consuming and may require computational tools. Framing analysis is a powerful method for understanding how environmental issues are presented and perceived. By analyzing the frames used in environmental discourse, researchers can gain insights into the narratives that influence public understanding and policy. 5. Ethnographic analysis. Ethnographic analysis is a qualitative research method that involves observing and interpreting human behavior and communication in real-world settings. In the context of environmental discourse analysis, ethnography is used to understand how people talk about and engage with environmental issues in their daily lives, often in their natural social settings. 1. Steps in ethnographic analysis of environmental discourse. Selecting the research setting. Choose a field site where environmental discourse naturally occurs. This could be community meetings, environmental organizations, protests, or informal discussions in affected communities. Defining research questions. Outline the specific aspects of environmental discourse you want to explore. For instance, how do activists talk about climate change, or how do community members discuss local environmental issues? Gaining access and building rapport. Establish relationships with the individuals or groups in your chosen setting to gain access and build trust, which will facilitate genuine and open communication. Data collection through observation. Observe interactions and conversations related to environmental topics. Take detailed field notes on how people discuss environmental issues, the language they use, and the social dynamics of these interactions. Conducting interviews. Complement observations with interviews to get deeper insights into participants' views, motivations, and interpretations regarding environmental topics. Recording discourse. Collect recordings of conversations, speeches, or discussions when possible and appropriate, ensuring informed consent is obtained from participants. Analyzing data. Transcribe and analyze the collected data, looking for recurring themes, language patterns, and narrative structures that shape environmental discourse. Interpreting findings. Interpret the data to understand how environmental discourse is constructed and maintained in the observed setting. This includes identifying cultural norms, power dynamics, and the influence of context on how people talk about environmental issues. Reporting findings. Present findings in a narrative format, highlighting the observed discourse patterns and their implications for understanding environmental issues. 2. Benefits of ethnographic analysis in environmental studies. Contextual insights. Provides a rich understanding of how environmental discourse is shaped by social, cultural, and political contexts. In-depth understanding. Offers deep insights into how people think about and engage with environmental issues in their everyday lives. Dynamic analysis. Captures the fluid and evolving nature of environmental discourse in real time. 3. Challenges. Time-consuming. Requires significant time to observe, build rapport, and collect data. Subjectivity. Interpretation is influenced by the researcher's perspective and biases. Ethical considerations. Observing and recording in natural settings involves ethical considerations around privacy and informed consent. Ethnographic analysis provides a unique lens for understanding environmental discourse in its natural context. By observing how people naturally engage in discussions about the environment, researchers can uncover deeper insights into the cultural and social factors that influence environmental discourse. Conclusion. Each methodology presents a unique perspective on environmental discourse. Content analysis identifies patterns in texts, while critical discourse analysis reveals power structures. Narrative analysis deciphers storytelling's influence. Framing analysis examines how issues are presented, and ethnographic analysis offers in-depth insights into real-world discourse. Together, these methodologies deepen our understanding of how language influences environmental knowledge and policy. Frequently asked questions. What methodologies are commonly used in environmental discourse analysis? The common methodologies include content analysis, critical discourse analysis, CDA, narrative analysis, framing analysis, and ethnographic analysis. Each method offers unique insights into how language shapes our understanding of environmental issues. What is content analysis, and how is it applied in EDA? Content analysis is a systematic method for examining texts to identify patterns, themes, and meanings. In EDA, it involves analyzing environmental texts to understand how issues are framed, represented, and communicated. What are the steps involved in content analysis for EDA? The steps include defining the research question, selecting texts, developing a coding scheme, coding and categorizing texts, analyzing patterns, and interpreting and reporting findings. How does critical discourse analysis, CDA, differ from content analysis? CDA goes beyond identifying patterns to critically examine how language reflects and maintains power dynamics. It focuses on uncovering the ideological underpinnings in environmental discourse and how different stakeholders influence public opinion and policy. How does narrative analysis contribute to understanding environmental discourse? Narrative analysis examines how storytelling structures and themes influence perceptions of environmental issues. It studies how narratives are constructed, their functions, and their impact on public understanding and behavior. What is framing analysis, and why is it important in EDA? Framing analysis investigates how environmental issues are presented or framed in communication. It identifies specific angles or perspectives that influence public perception and policy regarding environmental topics. What challenges are associated with framing analysis? Challenges include the subjectivity of identifying frames, the complexity of environmental frames, and the difficulty of analyzing large volumes of texts. How does ethnographic analysis differ from other methodologies in EDA? Ethnographic analysis involves observing and interpreting environmental discourse in real-world settings, providing in-depth insights into how people naturally discuss environmental issues in their daily lives. What are the benefits of ethnographic analysis for EDA? Benefits include gaining contextual insights, understanding real-world discourse dynamics, and capturing the evolving nature of environmental discussions. What are some common challenges across the methodologies used in EDA? Common challenges include subjectivity and researcher bias, the complexity of coding and analysis, and the time-consuming nature of data collection and interpretation.